Lab A, PowerShell Core Review. The purpose of this nugget is to review the lab assignment items that you were given in Lab A PowerShell Core Review. Your lab document has 23 tasks that you need to complete. Now, my suggestion is that you go to cbtnuggets.com, log on to your account, click on your account name, and go to the Nugget Lab menu option. There you'll find all the downloadable materials for the various nuggets. Just look for this one for the Ultimate PowerShell course, download the zip file. You'll find all of your lab documents in there, and I'm asking you to go through the 23 items in Lab A, Windows PowerShell Core Review. Go through those on your own, and then when you're finished attempting them, continue watching the rest of this nugget as we cover all of the sample solutions. PowerShell ships with two different hosting applications. The first is the console application, which we're looking at right here, and the second is the Windows PowerShell Integrated Script Environment, or ISE. They both contain the PowerShell engine within themselves, but they provide a different mechanism for interacting with that engine. Number 2, in PowerShell version 2, how can you display a list of locally installed modules that might not be loaded into memory? Well, that would be get module list available. And that'll list everything that's on the machine but not yet loaded into memory, although it will also list ones that could be loaded into memory. The difference is if you run get module by itself, you'll see the ones that are actually loaded into memory. And that takes us to number 3, which says in PowerShell version 3, why is it possible to search for help on commands that aren't even loaded into memory yet? And that's the module auto discovery or auto loading feature. I'll switch over to my Windows 8 computer, and if I ask for help on, let's look for help on SMB shares. It's going to be able to find that information because Windows PowerShell version 3 automatically looks at the modules that are installed in the proper locations, and it pretends they're loaded. So it'll list out the help for me, and if I actually try to run these commands, it will implicitly load the module so that I don't have to explicitly do so. Now, number 4 says that if you're reading the help for a command and you saw this parameter listed, what would you know about the parameter? And if I look at the help for get service, there's actually a very similar example. And it looks something like this. Now, in your lab document, it used the -computer name parameter, but this one's laid out the same. This tells me a few things. First of all, the fact that the entire thing, both the parameter name and its value, are contained in square brackets means the parameter is optional. I could run this command without specifying this parameter. The parameter name itself being contained in square brackets tells me that it is positional. If I choose to use this parameter, I don't actually have to type -name. I could simply provide a string value in the first position, and that would be interpreted as the value for the name parameter. The angle brackets tell me that this does accept strings, and the two square brackets jammed up against each other tells me that it can accept multiple strings. So just by kind of interpreting the punctuation there, you can learn a lot about the parameters and what they're capable of doing and how to run the command. Number 5, how would you discover the command that the alias GSV points to? Just ask for help, GSV. It's actually get service, the same command we were just looking at. Another approach would be to write get alias GSV. And that'll show you the alias definition, which is the get service command. Number 6, fix the following command. Now what the person has typed is get event log -security newest 10. Both two common gotchas going on here. First of all, they've omitted the dash in the command. And that's a verbal thing. As I mentioned in an earlier nugget, I tend to refer to commands like this verbally as get event log. Really, the command name is get-event log. I verbally drop the dash, and sometimes that can be confusing for folks who are trying to assemble all this new information in their heads. The other thing that's gone wrong here is we've specified a value, security, instead of a parameter name. Parameter names always take this form, dash name space value. There is no parameter called dash security. The parameter you're thinking of is dash log name, and security is the value that gets fed to it, much like 10 is the value being fed to the -newest parameter. Running that, and you'll see that it works fine. Number 7, what command can be used to change a property value for an item? For example, how would you change the read-only property of a file? That would be the set item property command. It'll take a path, which is the path to the item you want. It then accepts the name of the item property you want to change and the value that you want to change it to. Number 8. In PowerShell version 2, can new PS drive be used to map a drive in Explorer? What about in PowerShell version 3? Let's take a help at new PS drive. We'll help this dude. There's a distinct difference between this command in version 2 of PowerShell and version 3 and later. In version 2 of Windows PowerShell, this command cannot be used to create a drive mapping that will appear in Windows Explorer. For example, new PS drive, name, test. Root location, I'll just point it at my Windows folder. And the provider is going to be the file system. So that's going to create that. I can then cd to test, and I can display the contents and so on. But if I go to Windows Explorer and I go to a computer, that test drive doesn't show up. Now, things are just a little bit different in PowerShell version 3. So I'm going to quickly switch over to my Windows 8 computer where I have version 3 installed. Let's run that same command. New PS drive, name test, root C Windows, provider, file system. This time we get a new switch called persist. When you use persist to create a file system drive, when you use the persist parameter, the root must be the file system location on a remote computer. So that's essentially switching the behavior of new PS drive. Now, if I took persist off, it's still going to let me create this test drive, but it's not going to show up in Windows Explorer. If I use the persist switch, it is going to show up in Windows Explorer, but that means I have to create a drive that follows the rules for Windows Explorer, which means a drive can't point to a directory on an existing drive. I would have to map this to a UNC pointing to a server and a share if that's what I wanted to try and accomplish. Back to PowerShell version 2 and number 9. Create a simple hash table that has two key value pairs. So hash tables always start with an @ sign and curly brackets. And then inside those, I'll put key 1 equals value 1, semicolon, key 2 equals value 2. If I look at that, I get them both. And that means I can type key 1 and pull out value 1, and key 2 and pull out value 2. So just a very, very simple hash table in that fashion. Number 10, what is a here string? Now, these are often easier to see in a script, so I'll pop open the ISE real quick. A here string is a string that starts with an @ sign and either a single or double quotation mark, and it ends with the corresponding quotation mark and another @ sign, and that has to be on the very beginning of a line all by itself. Within there, I can put anything I want to, including carriage returns and special characters, all kinds of stuff, and the entire thing will be read as a single string. So that's a here string in PowerShell terminology. Number 11, what would be the difference in enclosing a string in single quotes or double quotes? Well, in double quotation marks, PowerShell will look for variables and replace them with their contents. So now if I look at A, you can see that that's happened. And in double quotation marks, you can also use sub-expressions. Sometimes they work a little bit better than others. So within single quotes, though, you can't do any of that. In single quotes, you also cannot use escape characters, which is another advantage of double quotes. Number 12, is this a valid variable name? Yes, it absolutely is. And I can retrieve it like that. I don't think it's a good variable name. I think it's a lot of extra typing, and I think it's a little harder to read, especially if you start making really long variable names like that, but it is legal. Number 13, how would you permanently delete a variable from memory? List two possible ways. Well, hopefully you remembered that PowerShell stores its variables in a drive called variable. That means I should simply be able to delete variable x to delete the x variable from the drive, and there it went. Another way you could have thought of was to look for commands that include the word variable as their noun, and you would find remove variable. And you could provide the name of the variable that you wanted to remove, and that would do it too. Number 14. Oh, yeah. Sometimes I wish I didn't put things like this into lab documents. Oh well. I guess we'll just try and do this sort of ad hoc. Let's take a string, Don Jones at lab.pri. Now the goal is to make that jones.don at lab.pri. So I'm going to have to construct a regular expression that's going to, let's see, put my quotes here. We need to grab anything, I need to capture anything A to Z, and there might be more than one of those. I've got a literal period, and then I need to capture whatever was A to Z, and there might be more than one of those. And then I have an @ sign, and I really don't care what happens after that. So let's just see, first of all, if I got that correct. Email match regex. True. Now let's look at matches. Yep, so 1 got the first name and 2 got the second name. I want to point out that the reason I'm kind of going through this and not just giving you the answer is because the process by which I arrive at the answer is just as important as the answer itself. I'm doing everything interactively here. I'm doing it in a way that lets me check my work as I go. So I wrote the regex out, and then I ran it just plain with the match operator to see if it properly captured into 1 and 2 the things I was hoping it would. So now let's take email and run it through the replace operator. We want to grab the regex, and we want to punch in, let's see, $2.1. I'm just going to try this all by itself. Yeah, that's what I kind of thought. Double quotes always mess me up on that. See, remember in double quotes, it's going to read the $signs as variables, and those are empty. And so them being empty is why I got an empty output. All right. So I'm missing a key bit here. Hang on one sec, and I'm going to stare at it until it makes sense to me. You've probably been sitting there telling me what I was doing wrong, right? I just can't hear you through the video. Email? Duh. So let's put an @ sign in there. There we go. Now the reason I had to put the @ sign in here, this is a good thing to point out too. My regex specified the @ sign. And one of the reasons I wanted it to specify the @ sign is to keep it from grabbing this portion. I wanted to make sure it only grabbed things before the @ sign. But because my regex includes the @ sign, that means whatever I specify as the replacement also needs the @ sign, because the entire regex, everything captured by the regex, is going to go away and be replaced by this. And so that's how I got that out of there. Man, I'm glad I did that, and it was not too bad, just a single typo. Number 15. What's the difference between import CSV and get content when reading a comma-separated values file? Let's see if I have any CSV files. Recent logs. Sure. Get content, recent logs.csv. Just raw data here. This is just pure text with nothing being done to try and interpret this. Import CSV, on the other hand, will actually try to interpret the data and reconstruct it into a structured set of output. It's the difference between looking at a CSV file in Excel, which knows how to import CSV and break it down into columns and rows, and looking at that same CSV file in Notepad, which is not trying to import it, it's just simply displaying the raw text. Number 16. Can you use export CSV to export a data file whose fields are delimited with a pipe character instead of a comma? Help export CSV. You absolutely can, because you've got this delimiter switch. You can specify an alternate delimiter so that you're no longer technically creating a CSV, you're creating a file with some other delimiter being used. Number 17, how can you display a list of an object's properties, methods, and events, which, by the way, are collectively known as its members? You would simply pipe it to getMember or GM, and you get a list of its properties, its methods, and its events. Number 18, write a command that will display the current day of the week, like Monday. Okay? Well, I know I can get the current date with getDate, and if I put that in parentheses, it lets me access the day of week property. Now, I could have gotten that information by piping it to GM and seeing that there is a day of week. If I was a little curious about what all those things contained, maybe I would pipe it to select star. And that shows me that day of week is the thing that I'm actually after. Number 19, will the following command work to retrieve BIOS information from every computer in the domain? And you're going to have to be looking at your lab document to follow along on this, but the answer is no, it won't. The first command being run is getAdComputer. That's going to retrieve all the computers from Active Directory. Good enough. It's then using selectObject to change the name property into a computer name property. Good enough. And it's then feeding that to getWMIObject, and that's where it's all going to fall apart. Because if we look at the full help for getWMIObject and we go down to the computer name parameter, we can see that it in fact does not accept pipeline input. So you can't simply pipe computer names into it because the computer name parameter was never rigged up for that purpose. Now for the next one, number 20, I'm going to switch over to my Windows 8 computer because I've actually got the Active Directory commandlets over here. So the next one is getAdComputer minus filter star. Minus filter star, and I'm piping that to select object, and I'm going to create a computer name property out of the old name property, and I'm piping that to get hotfix. Let's just run that and see what happens. Should be interesting. I'm actually going to hit pause while it runs. There we go. That's all the errors I was expecting. Now look, in a perfect world that command would have worked, but here's why it didn't. Help get hotfix minus full. First of all, if we go down to the computer name parameter, you can see that it says it does accept pipeline input by property name. Here's a problem, though. You got to make sure you really read the entire set of help, because we're going to get down to the bottom here at some point. I'm looking for the secret text. You cannot pipe input to get hotfix. I don't know why they've rigged the parameters up to accept pipeline input when in fact you can't, but they did. And you know what? At the end of the day, the why doesn't matter. What's important is that you know what you can and cannot do. Now, number 20 says if the command doesn't work, which we've determined it doesn't, rewrite it so that it will work. Now, this is simple. Just take the pipeline out of the equation. Get hotfix from computer name, use a parenthetical expression. getAdComputer minus filter star. You would never do this for all computers in your domain all at once probably, but my domain only has about 4 computers, so this is safe. The trick is the minus computer name parameter wants a string. It doesn't want a name property. It doesn't want an entire computer object, so I've got to expand the name property. Now, I still may get some errors because I'm pretty sure I've got a couple of the computers stopped, but we'll let that run for a second and see what it does. Oot, okay, it pulled at least a few back from at least one of the computers, so we're going to call that success. Now, we're on to 21. Display a list of running processes. Let's go back to Windows 7 here because I got a little bit bigger of a window. There we go. So we're going to do get process, and it says the output should be a 5-column table. So if I need to force a table out of 5 columns, I'm going to have to use format table. And we want the name, the ID, and then we want the virtual memory, paged memory, and working set as megabytes. Okay, well, I'm going to show you a cheat trick because these hash tables take a long time to type, don't they? n equals VM in megabytes. So that's what we're going to name this column. Expression equals. Also notice how every time I type those curly brackets, I tend to type the opening and the closing, and then use the cursor to go back and start typing in between them. That way I never forget how many I've opened, and so I don't have to remember how many to subsequently close. This is going to be $_period VM divided by 1 megabyte, and then I'm going to give it a format string of N2. Now I'm going to have to do 3 more of these structures. So I'm going to grab this to the clipboard and then paste it. And paste it. And so now I can go back. This second one is going to be paged memory instead of VM. And this last one over here is going to be working set. Oops. Working set divided by 1 megabyte. And boom, there we go. It's not awesome though. Let's add auto size so the table's a little prettier. There we go. Not too shabby. Number 22. Read about the command get history. It displays a list of recently run commands. Write a command that displays a list of recent commands, including the ID. So let's just run get history real quick and see what it does. What's it mean by ID? Okay, so that ID is that first column, and it's actually called ID. Okay. And then I've got a command line, so that's the command text, and I want to display the elapsed time. Now look, if you haven't taken the opportunity to really attempt this one on your own, stop watching immediately and try this out. Regard this as your final exam for this first hunk of nuggets in this series, because this is really going to sum up everything. So I need to display the elapsed time. The default output of this command does not include anything about time. So I need to look at its members. Now I see there is a start execution time and an end execution time, and those are date time values. Okay. Get history. Select property ID command line, which is the text. I'm going to make a new property called elapsed time, and its expression is going to be the end execution time, because if you think of time, as time progresses, the values get bigger. I'm thinking out loud here. So the end execution time is going to be a bigger numeric value than the start execution time. So I'll take the end and I'll subtract the start. Right? Like if the end execution time was 10 a.m. and the start was 9 a.m., 10 minus 9 is 1. So that would give me a 1 hour of elapsed. That seems plausible. I'm going to hit enter right now. Okay. All right, that's not bad. It gave me numbers. And the rest of this was, I want to display the list with the longest running commands first. So here's why I used select object instead of format table. Because select object still lets me pipe this on to something else, like sort. And the property I'm going to sort on is elapsed time. And I'm going to do that in descending order so that the bigger values are first and the smaller values come later. So I was actually able to sort on that new property that I had just created. Now I'm still not completely thrilled with the visual layout here. So I'm going to then pipe it to format table auto size. And oh, you know what yeah, column elapsed time did not fit onto the display and was removed. Okay. So, you know what? Let's go ahead and auto size, but let me get you to do the ID first, then the elapsed time, and then the command, and go ahead and wrap that if you need to. Oops, it was command line, wasn't it? That's why that showed up blank. Ah, see, that's prettier. And you get to see what it does with wrap too. Like this whole thing didn't fit, so instead of truncating it, it wrapped it. And this whole doing this with a table was completely optional. You didn't have to go that far. I like my output to look nice, and so after I get the data I want, I don't mind sending it to format table to prettify it up a little bit. That was fun. 23, write at least 4 different commands that will terminate all running instances of Notepad. All right, so let's run up a couple of notepads. First, I think I could do stop process name notepad. Yep, there they went. All right. Little trick, semicolon lets you put 2 commands on the same line. Launch 2 copies of Notepad that way. I could do get process name notepad stop process. So that's slightly different. There they went. I could do get process name notepad pipe to for each object and execute the kill method of each one. Yep, that's another one. And let's see what else I could do. Trying to think of what. Oh, you know what? There's an external command. Is it just called kill? Let's run notepads again. Is there just a kill command? Oh, kill is actually an alias to stop process. Okay, kill name notepad. That'll work too. Ha! And there's actually other ways you could do this. Those are the 4 I can think of right off the top of my head, but there you go. That takes us through all 23 items in your lab. So that's all the items that we need to review. You know, doing these labs really is a good chance to kind of cement your skills. This is something that even after you've watched a few more nuggets in this series, I think you should come back to this lab. Make sure you can still repeat some of those tasks, especially the get history one, because it's going to really help reinforce these core skills. We're going to continue to build on these. So if there's something here that didn't make sense, now's a good time to go back and review so that you kind of have your head wrapped around it. Make sure you can get through that whole lab document by yourself at least once without having to cheat and look at the answers. And then you should be ready to go on. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.